I'm just looking at it from like a person who is going through it and they're thinking, okay, you know what? I've left this difficult situation,
Hmm.
but I don't see the healthy alternative. So, for example, I've been emotionally abused in all my
Hmm.
relationships, right? As an example, it hasn't happened, but just
Yeah.
saying as an example. I come out of it and they say, okay, Amy, okay, Terrain, I want better. One of the
Hmm.
first questions people are going to ask, okay, what does better look like?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Right? And then the person's
Exactly.
like, I don't know. But what's
Hmm.
better for me, Amy, may be different than you, may be different than so many other people. How do we help them to come to the conclusion that, okay, you want better, but what does that look like? Can you put it into words? Can you draw me a picture?
Hmm.
Right? How do you get them to identify what better is? And maybe then you could build the path to whatever it is that it looks like.
Yeah. So you've got to identify and help them identify their why. Okay. They've got to have a why. They got to know why they want something better for themselves. And that's going to take a lot of introspection and deep work as well, because there's so much more to it than saying, well, I want this because I want a better life for my kids. Okay, well, let's look at that. Well, why do you want a better life for your kids? Well, now we're going to go a little deeper than, okay, I want a better life for my kids, which is a very noble cause, right? But let's look at go a little deeper and, okay, why do we want that? And then have them answer that question, and continue to go down until you help them find that answer. Continue to ask why. And when you get to that answer that you can see strikes an emotional chord within them, and you know that they're feeling some sort of passionate way about what they've discovered, you know you're headed in the right direction. You don't have to necessarily know where you want to be in 10 years, but maybe the end goal is, maybe I want to at least get to the point where I can look at the past without breaking down and crying. That's a good goal to start with. So we can work with that, right? We can work with that and start there. So we start with our whys. Why do we want to not break down? Why do we want to look at our past? Okay, now we've got some goals we can develop out of that. And so it's just starting small. It's okay if you don't know where you want to be in 10 years. It's okay if you don't know if you want to get on the internet and tell your story. That's fine. We don't need to know that yet. The important thing is that, you've got a passionate why, because without that, you're not going to get out of bed for it. You've got to feel some sort of way about it. And so that's the first step we got to take. The first thing we got to figure out.
Do some people then experience self-sabotage where they'll sabotage their own progress because it's unfamiliar to them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But that's where coaches and finding your tribe and, trusted people in your life, are really going to help. And if you don't have trusted people in your life, like I didn't, it was just me and my autistic son. He was nonverbal. So I had nobody to talk to. I had to find my tribe, but I wanted to do that for myself and for my son, because I could not take care of my son effectively unless I was taking care of myself effectively and mentally. And so I went out and I looked for friends who had similar interests. I looked for books that could help me, move forward and get past all of this. And I looked for support groups, did a lot of research, watched a lot of videos. And so, yeah, it's just all about taking those steps for yourself.
I wonder if that's enough for some people. There was a woman, we knew each other on Instagram, I want to say. No, sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And her marriage was ending. It was her second marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it was ended is because she ended up cheating. She was cheating on her partner.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing her speak sometimes, I look back and I used to use, I don't know if you ever use a phrase, but like, oh, I'm gonna have a weekend getaway, right? But to me, it
Oh,
meant
yeah, yeah.
like you're going to do something, family, friends, whatever the case is. To her, it meant that she's gonna hook up with someone else.
Uh, yeah.
So when she was going through this, she eventually got tired of the behavior, and then the marriage ultimately ended. And since her marriage ended. The ex-husband, he's moved on, he's doing his
Mhm.
thing. Her, in the last, I think it's been about 18 months, I think she's had about six boyfriends,
Oh wow.
right? And she's experienced manipulation the way she shares it, but then when she was reflective now, she was like, oh, you know what? I'm manipulating the situation because it's strictly
Mhm.
becoming a sexual thing now because
Mhm.
that was what she was doing while she was married.
Mhm.
And I share this just because sometimes when she like makes jokes and comments, she doesn't realize that they're sexual. Like to her, there isn't
Mhm.
any form of manipulation, but she's manipulating the situation to she's using that to manipulate the situation when she gets into these men.
Mhm.
She went to go seek help and she had a difficult time understanding her role in the manipulation,
Yeah.
right? When you speak to these people, do some of them identify that they played a part in maybe the situation that they're in, and then they have to do some work to resolve that as well.
Absolutely, and some people will never get there. Some, a lot of people just don't want to take responsibility. It's a big thing to take responsibility for your own actions and for yourself, especially when you feel like you're the one who's been victimized. Even if you're the manipulator and you feel like you were the one that was victimized, it's really difficult to take that responsibility on yourself. But what a lot of people are missing is that's the key to moving forward and growing is actually taking responsibility. So, like in my case, right, what I had to learn and what I didn't want to come to terms with was the fact that in my own abuse, my own role that I played in my abuse was the fact that I was a people pleaser. Okay. I had to say yes to everything, to everybody, because I could not disappoint anybody. That feeling of disappointing anybody was soul crushing to me, right? I couldn't do it. And I had to figure out why that was a thing for me. And I had to fix it, But first, I had to recognize that this was an issue for me. And getting people to that point of taking responsibility is one of the most difficult things about doing this. Like I said, especially if they're the ones that are being victimized or feel like they're being victimized. Um, but I can tell you the ones that are going to move forward and the ones that are going to do incredible things after the abuse are the ones that actually do look at this the correct way and take responsibility for their own actions and their own situations. There are things that we had control of, even if it was saying no, even if it was leaving sooner, even if it was standing your ground. You had a choice, you know. Um, God or the universe or whatever you believe, I don't know, um, gave us free will, right? We all have free will. And that is one thing that God Himself is not going to take from us. So why are we giving that to somebody else freely and willingly? So we got to remember that we always have the decision and we always get to suffer the consequences of the decision, whether it's good consequences or bad consequences, whether the consequences lead to abuse or lead to a life of, freedom and love and whatnot. But that's what it all comes down to is personal decision, personal responsibility, and recognizing that we do play a role in all of this ourselves.